Hi everyone, Tasha here and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to create a card using items from the Hedgehog Hollows February subscription kit. The February kit included a bunch of fun items for spring cards, and we're going to be doing this stamp and stencil design. I just love these large blooms on these flower petals. I'll be using a sheet of the included double-sided patterned paper. I'm using this pretty black and pink polka dot print. I'll also be using the included stencil. I'll be using the small sentiment stamp set. It includes several sentiments, and this is the one I'll be using on the project we're making today. And then I'll be using the larger stamp set included in the kit and the polka dot stamp that you put onto the petals. I'm starting with some Color Hive ink in the color Yellowstone, and I'm going to be stenciling two of the centers of that stenciled flower design. You can place them anywhere. These plumes are really large, so I wanted to kind of make sure that I could fit as much of two flowers on the page as possible. Next, I went in with the color Flamingo, and I started on the petals. The Color Hive ink is awesome because it has this type of coverage that you don't need much ink to cover when you're stenciling, and it's also water reactive, so you could do like a distress ink technique where you put the droplets on if you choose to. So using this stencil and a little piece of low tack tape, I just made my way around that center of the flower to add the petals. And again, these petals are large, so on a standard A2 size card, you can either have one large flower or have two flowers, but it would be kind of hard to have two full flowers because of the size. I think this is a really neat look though for spring. It's not like a traditional stamp set where you just have one flower design. You really can customize the petals and the flower with this kit. So I just made my way around that first flower, layering on the flamingo ink, and then I did the same thing on the second flower on the bottom. It's really easy to do since the three pieces are part of this one stencil, so everything fits together. Once I was done with the two flowers, I went in with Palm Tree and ink blended the stem and a leaf on the one side. And then to add a little green on the other side, I just moved my stencil and placed it where I could have one leaf image blended on that top portion. I also like that the little pop of green next to the pink and how it looks. It just looks great. To add even more color, I decided to put a couple parts of the petal around the card, making it look like there was another flower that is off the card. So I just used a portion of the petal stencil, and it gave the illusion of another flower in that top right corner. Now for my stamping, I'm going in first with English mustard. And I put the center stamp onto a stamp block, and I'm just going to stamp it as close to the center that I can. It gives this really cool dotted design. And then once I was done with the centers, I'm going to go in and stamp the petals with the same type of technique. I've just put it onto a block, and I'm just trying to line it up as best as I can. I'm using the color Tiptree Jam, which is a beautiful darker pink color, and it works great on top of that flamingo shade. So I run around, and it's okay if you go over because we're going to be covering those open areas with this black marker. So I just outlined around the edges of the stem and the leaves, and then I'm going to fill in all that white area with black ink. So again, this way you don't have to worry much about staying in the lines when you're stamping that design on the petal, because we can cover it up and fix it up with a black marker. But for the black marker, you do want to be careful when you're close to the edges of your stencil design so that you don't cover or mess up your lines on that colored area. So once you got that outlined area, you can just shade it in and it goes really fast. I also love how these colors pop against the dark black background. After I was done coloring all over those open areas, this is how my completed card looks with that background colored in. I went around the center with the black marker as well, just to make sure that that center area was defined, and it kind of just cleaned up any of those edges that I may have missed when I was stamping on that second layer. But I just love how these colors pop. They're just so pretty with that dark background. I also added a few ink dots just with a Copic marker. I wanted to add some white little paint splatters, and instead of using a paintbrush, I'm going in with this white paint spray. Just one pump of spray and you get a nice splatter of white paint. Next, I'm moving in to do my sentiment. I'm going in and doing some embossing. I'll be using Color Hive Clear, which is a great embossing ink or glue. And I did use some of my powder tool on this black cardstock just to make sure I don't get too much of the embossing powder in the areas that I didn't want embossed. I'm using my Maker Forte Smusher tool just to make sure I have even pressure, and then I'm going in with white embossing powder. I'm using an ultra fine or a fine embossing powder because of this sentiment is kind of a thinner script. I wanted to make sure I had as much detail showing up as possible. Once I was done heat embossing, I went over to my paper trimmer and then I cut some of my glitter cardstock. This silver cardstock is really pretty and sparkly, so I decided to put it around my center card to kind of mat it and give it a really sparkly edge, and I'll also be using it around my sentiment. So I'm trimming down that embossed greeting down to size. I'm just kind of freestyling it, there's no real exact size. I'm just kind of cutting it where I think it looks good, and then I glued it onto the sparkly paper. And then I just trimmed down two sides to kind of match the border width. Once I was done, I went over and started to adhere my layers. So I'm going in with just some Tombow glue runner, and I'm attaching my center base first, just making sure that it's as straight as possible. Then I'm using the same glue runner to attach the center card onto this cute polka dot pattern paper. I just love this pattern paper, and that black and pink coordinate perfectly with the colors I use on the center. For the greeting, just to give it a little bit of dimension, I attached 3 little square foam dots to just make it raised up a little bit. And I think it's just so pretty. For the card base, it's just some white cardstock folded in half. I'm using my Maker Forte bone folder just to make sure it creases. And then I'm going to my trimmer and just trimming it down to size. Once this is done, I just attached it with the same glue runner. And here is a close-up of my 2 cards. I just love how these big petals look. It's so cheerful, and it's such a great card for spring. I hope you guys enjoyed today's project, and all of the details will be listed below. Have a great day. Bye-bye.